My name is Megan Bever. I am the book review editor for the Journal of the Civil War Era, and I am here today with Leslie Alexander. Professor Alexander is the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Professor of History at Rutgers University, and she most recently is author of Fear of a Black Republic, Haiti and the Birth of Black Internationalism in the United States, which was published with the University of Illinois Press. Dr. Alexander is here to speak a little bit about her book. So I'll start with a really broad question. Could you tell us a little bit about the book's central arguments and claims?
Yeah, this is really a book that is interested primarily in wanting to understand what the nature of Black political consciousness in the United States was about Haiti, really during the early national and antebellum eras. The book, for the most part, opens in 1804 with the Declaration of Haitian Independence. And the body of the book continues through the conclusion of the Civil War era, sort of tracing how Black political consciousness in the US evolved after Haiti declared its independence, and how they viewed Haiti, and ultimately how they began to advocate for Haiti's right to sovereignty over the course of the antebellum era. And as I'm sure we'll talk about, it culminates in the Civil War era with a discussion about how the United States government's decision to finally extend formal diplomatic recognition to Haiti sort of changed the relationship between the United States and Haiti. There's also an epilogue which goes into the 20th and even a bit into the 21st century, that also just kind of seeks to trace what the longer history of US foreign policy towards Haiti has been.
So how did you become interested in the topic?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. It was really kind of two things. Like, I first became interested in the topic when I was working on my first book, which was called African or American. And it was a book that was really interested in delving more deeply into Black political consciousness in New York City in the antebellum era, wanting to kind of understand how the first generation of two of folks who had emerged from bondage, right? How did they identify themselves, African or American? And how did that shape their political consciousness? And one of the things that I traced in that book was a pretty steady migration movement of Black activists and just regular folk, right, from New York and from other parts of the North to Haiti over the course of the antebellum era. And I just became really interested in wanting to know and understand better why Haiti was a potential destination for them, why Haiti figured so prominently in their consciousness. And I guess in a deeper sense, like what Haiti represented to them, what it meant to them. And so it was a question that had kind of nagged at me while I was working on my first book. But to be honest, I think what made me finally decide, okay, I really am going to write a book about this, was the earthquake in 2010 that obviously devastated large portions of Haiti and took an estimated 300,000 people's lives. And I was really struck by the media coverage in particular that seemed to kind of discuss Haiti and almost kind of pathologize Haiti absent any historical context. And as a historian, I really felt like people need to better understand how Haiti's current challenges can be understood if we better understand its history. And so, ironically, what had kind of started as a book that was really about Black political consciousness relative towards Haiti also really became a book that was also trying to kind of chart, right, the ebbs and flows of how the United States government responded to Haiti once it declared its independence.
Mhm. So you've pointed out and you brought this up in some of your earlier, in some of what you've been talking about, but the book does span quite a few decades. Right? You begin with Haitian independence in 1804. And then, as you say, like through the epilogue, we're really into the Obama administration, even.
Yeah.
Um, So our journal, of course, focuses on the Civil War era. And so I want us to really center on those last two chapters, which focus on the late 1850s and then the early 1860s. So why is the Civil War era, or the war itself, important for understanding that relationship between Haiti and Black internationalism?
Yeah, this is a really important question because I'll be honest about the fact that when I started researching this project, I had a very different sense of what this era from the late 1850s through the Civil War were actually going to be about relative to the Black experience in the United States vis-a-vis Haiti, but also the United States government's relationship to Haiti. And I actually looked back at my original book proposal a while ago, and what ended up really becoming like three chapters, I had
Hmm.
originally pitched as one chapter because I thought I kind of knew what the narrative of that time period was going to be about. And in particular, based on what I had read before, I had a sense that the bill recognizing Haiti from, the United States government's recognition of Haiti was a bill that kind of flew through Congress. And as it turned out, that wasn't the case. So I think it turns out that the 1850s and the Civil War era end up being really important to the story for a few reasons. One is that, as I mentioned before, there is an immigration movement of Black folks from the United States to Haiti over the course of the antebellum era. The big first peak is in the 1820s, and it probably comes as no surprise that after Haiti is forced into a kind of a reparations agreement with France, which is known as the indemnity, the immigration movement kind of trickles off a bit. But then there's another big uptake in the immigration movement in the 1850s. And it's one that historians had not delved as deeply into as I think we needed to. And I think that section is really revealing because it tells us a lot about the internal politics in the Black community at the time, the debate over whether or not Black folks should leave the United States, and what that would potentially mean for the abolitionist movement if they do. And then for those who are committed to leaving the United States, where to go, right? Is it going to be Canada? Is it going to be Haiti? Is it going to be West Africa? And so there's lots of like rich political debate, right, that's taking place in the Black community at the time that I was able to really, I think, kind of recapture and reconstruct, particularly in chapter 7 of the book. The other big thing that I hadn't really expected to find in the archives is the debate that's happening within the United States government over how they're going to handle Haiti as an independent nation. And what my research really revealed, and you see this like in parts of chapter 6 and chapter 7, and then again in chapter 8, is a discussion of how the United States government really for decades plotted to try to overthrow and undermine the Haitian government in an effort to try to gain control over the island and reimpose slavery. And so then when the bill to recognize Haiti finally comes to Congress, right after the Civil War breaks out, it's actually then sort of, we understand that moment differently because I, again, had sort of thought that this was a bill that came to Congress and kind of sailed through, right? That once the Southern states removed themselves from the Union and formed the Confederacy, my sense was that, the Unionists, right, and the remaining Northern states would have approved it pretty quickly and easily. But my research revealed that the debate on the floor of Congress was actually pretty nasty. And what it mostly revealed was that the primary motivation for extending formal diplomatic recognition to Haiti was that it would serve the interests of US businessmen, right? And other folks who were hoping to exploit Haiti's natural resources for US profit. And so chapter 8 turned out to be a very different, well, first of all, it turned out to be a chapter, which I had really thought was maybe going to be a couple of paragraphs. But it also turned out to be a much more complicated story than I had previously imagined. So that whole era, dealing in particular with the immigration movement, but then also the question of how the United States government was going to deal with Haiti and whether they were going to actually try to extend right imperial control over Haiti became actually a much more important story than I had understood going in.
And it definitely sets up your epilogue really well. And I know there's a jump, from the Warriors and after on to the Clinton and Obama administrations, but
Yeah.
you really do see like the importance of business interests in the way that they really kind of um I can't think of another word but Trump, but
Yeah.
Trump human rights
Yeah.
in so many cases. It's really a sobering eighth chapter and a sobering epilogue.
Yeah. It
Uh,
really is. And I'll be honest, as a historian, the epilogue was actually not something I originally wanted to write. I primarily see myself as like an 18th and 19th century historian. I definitely did not want to write about the 20th century,
mhm.
but I really just felt like this topic was one that required that I do. Like, I didn't feel like I could tell the story to the point that I did in chapter 8 and then somehow leave it as though it receiving formal diplomatic recognition was some victory in the long term, and that what we have is formal recognition and then the abolition of slavery, ending things kind of on a positive note that did not ring true, right, for how the United States government dealt with Haiti following the war. So I ended up, moving out of my lane chronologically, and really trying to contend with how what happens in the Civil War era really sets Haiti on a particular trajectory.
So I want to talk now, move a little bit away from the Civil War, not too much actually.
Yeah.
But one of the threads that moves through your books is the role that Black women are playing in this movement. They have a really public role, maybe not always as public as they wanted. But when you're talking about Haitian sovereignty or you're talking about immigration, there are a lot of Black women's voices. Maria Stewart is in early chapters of the books, but you also have the Miss Paulian. I think we don't even know her first name, and other
No.
women we don't even know their names, but they're speaking about these topics and publishing about them. So my question really is, to what extent do Black women think about Black internationalism, either in regard to Haiti or generally? To what ways do they think about it that might be different or distinct from men?
Right. This is a really important question. And I actually first want to start by kind of underscoring what you said in the question, which is to just underscore the fact that Black women actually did think, right, in the 19th century about what was happening, right, politically, economically, socially. And they didn't think about it just relative to their local communities, but they did think about it, right, on a national and international scale. And I do kind of want to underscore that point because one of the things that I was hoping to do with this book is to highlight the fact that Black people in the 19th century were political and intellectual thinkers, right? Which is something that they're not particularly given credit for. And that sort of absence or that oversight, I think, is particularly egregious relative to women. It's a real challenge that I had with this project. I joked with my graduate students recently about how I sort of painted myself into a corner by choosing this topic because, women obviously across racial lines in the 19th century were not encouraged, right, to speak out publicly at all, and certainly not on political matters. So I wanted to find women's voices, but then chose a topic that made that particularly challenging for myself. But as you point out, we do see them. Mariah Stewart is probably the most prominent example of that, right? That she wrote, she delivered speeches, and in a number of them, she very specifically referenced Haiti and Haiti's right to sovereignty and her kind of disgust, right, with the United States government for refusing to recognize Haiti as a sovereign nation. Um, then we also see it in other places. So, as you said, one example, we have a newspaper report, right, of a woman named Miss Paulian who had, as best as we can tell from the newspaper reports, had escaped from slavery in the South, had made her way to the North, but still found herself dissatisfied with the conditions of the Black community, even in the so-called free North, right? And she decides that she's going to leave the United States and immigrate to Haiti. And so there's a story published in the newspaper about the speech that she delivers, and some of the reasons that she offers for her decision to migrate. Of course, as a historian, what's frustrating about it is we have no idea what happened to her, right? We have some sense that she boarded the ship and went. But what happened to her after she got there, of course, she falls out of the historical record. But that chapter that I mentioned before, that focuses on immigration in the 1850s, is chapter 7. That chapter does talk about, right, the role of women, particularly in the latter portion of the immigration movement, some of the letters that they're writing back, encouraging other people to migrate. And then it also talks about some of the fact that not all women agreed, right, on the immigration question period, and didn't necessarily agree about the destination. So that chapter also talks about people like Marianne Shadd Cary, right? Who was a prominent activist during the era, who advocated to migration for to Canada, right? So it shows kind of the internal politics, right? The complexity of the issue and the extent to which women are grappling with these questions. I'll just mention quickly, there's one other place where we really see women's participation around Haiti. It is in chapter 4, which focuses on a petitioning campaign that abolitionists, Black and white, participated in, bombarding Congress with petitions over about a 7-year period, demanding that the United States government extend formal diplomatic recognition to Haiti. It starts in the late 1830s and continues into the 1840s. And what we find when looking at these petitions is that the vast majority of them are signed, circulated, and in some cases, hand stitched together by women, both Black and white. And so there's lots of ways, right, in which we see women participating in these kind of global struggles for justice, sometimes in very public ways, right? And sometimes in very private ways, just quietly stitching together petitions to send to Congress.
So we're getting close to the end of our time here together, but
Yeah.
I do want to ask one final question. What do you most hope that readers take away from your study?
Oh, that's a great question. So yeah, I think there's maybe probably three, I'll say three quick things. One is that I'm hopeful that they will come away with what I kind of alluded to earlier, an understanding of the fact that Black folks in the 19th century were actually complex political thinkers, that they thought very deeply about their local struggles for justice, but also the national and international struggles for justice, and that they didn't always agree, right? That their political thinking was complex, and that they debated and thought collectively in really powerful and significant ways. The other thing is that is to emphasize the fact that Black people in the United States did actually care about struggles for justice that were happening outside of their own borders. I think for a long time, the popular stereotype has been that Black activists cared about the struggle for against slavery in their own country, right? But didn't care much about what was happening elsewhere. And I think this book really shows, right, a global consciousness emerging among activists much earlier than what they've been given credit for. And I guess then in the big picture, what I really hope people will take away from this book is a much larger understanding of how Haiti's current challenges have come into being, and to have a greater understanding of the role that specifically the United States government has played in preventing Haiti from being able to thrive as a fully powerful, sovereign, equal nation, right, in the global arena.
Thank you so much for talking with us today. It has been an absolute pleasure
The
to
pleasure is
hear a little more
mine.
of your
Thank you.
thoughts. So thank you so much.
Thank you.